Hey, you want to check out what's happening in alternative porn in France? Let me introduce you to Carré Rose Films. Founded by Carmina, a French-Mexican performer and longtime advocate for sex worker rights. This indie studio is doing things differently, putting performers first, pushing for diversity, and tackling industry issues head on, all of which keep all while keeping things hot and fun. One example, check out this series, 60 Minutes with. Carmina meets a fellow performer for 1 hour. No script, no plan, just sees where the moment takes them, and you get to be right there with them. Don't worry about whether you speak French or not. All films are either in English or subtitled, so you won't miss a thing. Curious? Head to carrierosefilms.com. That's Carrie rosefilms.com. Cams.com is a performer-run webcam studio working with models who want to make serious bank doing online sex work. Top Treasure Cams models are earning 100K plus a year, taking home weekly fat paychecks. We have a great affiliate program to reward you for any traffic you bring to the site. We help you set up with equipment, tech, sales techniques, monthly meetings, and so much more. Visit treasurecams.com to learn more about us and to cam with us. Have you ever been looking for an amazing queer cam performer? Well, I got you covered. You should check out TS Cami. Her super hot content is on Chatterbait, Twitter, Xhamster, and Reddit. Support this rad trans femme babe. Enter your fantasies. Big Fantasy is a porn star, stripper, femdom, and expert making your fantasies come true. Explore Fig's secret, luxurious world at AQUATAFANA collective.net and at Figs Fantasies on OnlyFans and Figs Fantasy on Instagram. She's waiting for you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Performers Pod. I'm Chelsea Poe, and I'm here today with Katherine Cane. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you. We originally, I think, first connected when we both worked at Kink Live.
Okay, I actually have a story about my first interaction with you that puts a lot of egg on my face.
Oh, what is it?
And I want to talk about it because it's something that has stayed with me. Um, so back when we were starting out,
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't a lot of trans performers. And like
Yes.
there wasn't a lot of trans cam girls, and Kink Live would do these things called two girl shows, right?
Yes.
And so I had made a tweet being like, I need to find people for a two girl show. And I don't remember who responded, but someone was like, does that include trans girls? And I was like, no, because at the time I was dating someone who was like, no penises.
Okay.
And it wasn't like no boy girl, it was just like no penises. So like trans men were fine. But he had this weird controlling thing about other dicks. And so I was like, no. And someone was like, well, that sounds really turfy. Like your girl show isn't including all girls. I'm like, well, it should be called a woman show to begin with, but whatever. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And I don't have a vocabulary for this dialogue because I don't know how to talk about this in regards to porn. Like, we're some of our parts, but we're people. And like, I was like, I just apologized and was like, you're right. And like left it and like didn't argue in the thread or anything, but just like sat with that for a while and was like, what, how do we talk about that? Like, how do we talk about preferences in that way when it comes to like, it's just about genitals and it has nothing to do with my preference off camera,
Hmm.
it's just what bits I work with currently.
Yeah, I actually just had someone else who worked at the armory during that time. So I'm like,
Yeah.
this very much fits in where I feel like when I came in,
Mhm.
I was like so hot about it because like the generation before mine at the armory were all these trans girls who were burnt out because they're like, I don't have any opportunities other than like doming here.
Yeah.
So my energy was like, I'm gonna be super loud, all this stuff. So I'm sorry if I came off as a bitch.
No, and I
I might have.
apologized to you I think you were going up to an upper floor party and I
Yeah.
think maybe like gotten a little toasty and like you didn't
Yeah.
remember at all. And it was like, okay, thank God there's no bad blood there. Like, because I
No,
really
not at
didn't
all.
want it to come off as that because I don't feel that way. I was just in a very toxic relationship, which I had my own toxicity in. Like, it wasn't all him, but it just was not good. And I should have left way sooner than I did and all sorts of early 20s mistakes. But yeah, I was like,
Same.
God, I wonder if she remembers that because I certainly do. And it has definitely like informed a lot of like how I talk about things.
Yeah, I definitely did. I was like, I think we're both gonna ignore it, but I'm glad you talked about it. And yeah, like we literally just talked about the upper floor on the last podcast.
Yeah.
had Stephanie Special on. I don't know if you ever met her.
I never met her in person, but
Hmm.
we followed each other for probably over a decade. So
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I brought up, I'm like, oh, I'm talking to Catherine after this. I'm like, we've all been in porn for like over 10 years, which is crazy to think
yeah.
about.
Well, I mean, I've kind of left shooting for outside companies. Like, I still make clips
Hmm.
and stuff, but like, it's really not my preference. I really prefer live, which is honestly silly because there's no residual income from live shows except for like VODs.
Yeah.
But that's really, I think, where I shine the most. But like, I never got into porn to like make porn. I got into porn to have a bunch of peak experiences where I didn't have to
Yeah.
call on the next day. So, I
I
did that. I had my fun, and now I'm like, I don't want to leave my house or deal with testing or other people.
For real, like I'll go out in the world and I'll shoot and like do trips for stuff, but like just getting back to like your home and just like camming is like this thing where you're like at home but you're still working and like getting new experiences.
Yeah, yeah. Plus, I mean, I'm like God of my cam room, like what
Yeah.
other public facing, honestly, customer service based job do you have a ban button? Like,
It's really nice. I wish I didn't have to use as much as I do,
yeah,
sadly.
agree, but it's nice to have it there.
So, where are you originally from? Are you from like the Bay originally? Because I feel like there's a lot of people who I met through Kink Live where I just assumed, oh, you're from here. You were just like kind of my existence in porn. You've
Mhm.
always been around.
Yeah, well, technically, I'm from the Central Coast, so it was like
Okay.
a 90-minute commute to San Francisco.
Wait, so you commuted just to Cam?
Yeah, because
Oh
the
my
studio was
God.
the only option for a long time. So twice a week, I would go over Highway 17. Um,
Oh my God.
yeah, and there was that in and of itself could be a book, like wild rides on Highway 17. That's the most dangerous road ever. But yeah, so I was like Bay Area adjacent, and I was spending a
Hmm.
lot of time in San Francisco because I had like gotten out of my first long-term relationship and then was like really exploring the kink scene up there and like
Yeah.
dating multiple people. Everyone knew about each other and like it was all like I was very ethical in my hoe phase.
Yeah, I feel like that was the era there. Like
Yeah.
everyone was very like outwardly slutty, but like ethically slutty.
Yeah, everybody knew about each other,
Hmm.
and we'd all like go get tested regularly and like it was an open dialogue. Like there was never any like messy one night stands where it's like, well, what are we now? Because that conversation happened first. And you
Hmm.
also know all my limits in the bedroom and my likes and dislikes because that's what the kink community is. And it was very much like of that time, though, I think. And because of like that time, the armory and kink was just overlapping with that community so much that
Yeah.
it was like, oh, this is like a way to essentially facilitate me getting to have experiences I wouldn't be able to have otherwise. And like,
Hmm.
yes, I recognize that like once I do this, I can't take it back. And certain doors will be closed to me if I decide to take this step, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that, where it feels like the armory definitely like elevated everything, where you could do these more extreme things, where you could like, you always had access to two fucking machines. Like that's not
I mean,
usually in anyone's
I have
camps.
access to one anyways.
Okay.
You don't have a Sibian, but that's on purpose.
Yeah, those are so fucking crazy. Like the loudness of it alone is
I think
unreal.
the new motor bunnies are a little better, but I have a hood piercing, which just is not at all compatible with the ergonomics of a Sibian or any sort of straddle vibrator like that. And so like it's just not for me. I'm not taking out my jewelry every time. Like,
Yeah, that's
no.
such a hassle, not worth it. So, were you like just kind of looking to like further your like experiences in BDSM and stuff, as well as like how did you start camming though?
So,
Was it
okay,
at the armory?
I started camming at the armory as a means to get in the building to start meeting
Mm,
directors so I could get booked. Like,
same, yeah.
I had a friend, well, I had a bunch of people sort of tied to the armory, but my like person on the inside was CC Rhodes, who I don't think is performing anymore. Um, but a friend basically was just like, go talk to her. And so I did. And she was like, okay, so it's really hard to just like send in photos and get booked. What you want to
Yeah,
do,
for sure.
and I had already started like my
Oh, Girl
girlfriend.
Fund. Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
that site.
which that site doesn't exist anymore. They pulled a Plex store, stopped paying models, and then like disappeared. Um,
There's just so many sites that are just like so gone, and it makes me feel
yeah,
so old in this industry where I'm like, I remember when that was like the mini
that's
vids of the
recent though.
time.
They just got shut down in the last 6 months, but it's been
Oh,
over a year
really?
since they paid anyone. Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God.
I honestly have still had an account and like wasn't doing anything on there because I was a Plex store model when that whole stuff happened, like, and they
hmm
never paid me. So I was just kind of observing in like the girls' blog and whatnot, and I was like, oh yeah, let's let's watch this tea happen. You know, but it it went the way I expected it to, unfortunately. But yeah, so I got in through camming, didn't plan on making camming a thing. It was like a means to an end.
Yeah.
And then after I'd been camming for 6 months, I was actually doing a photo shoot with Rain de Grey and was super stressed because it was going late and I had work the next day. And she's like, why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you doing this to yourself? Like you're established now. Like you can have freedom. Why don't you take the big step and just like, quit your day job? And I was like, that's a very good point because I really hate my day job. And it's like I was a office manager for a security company, which was just like fear mongering. And it wasn't fun. And it just there is all sorts of factors as to why it was so miserable. But I quit and I haven't looked back. I'm actually kind of trying to maybe find like something a little more stable now, which is
Yeah.
really hard when you either have to like find something in the industry or a half lie on your resume.
Yeah. Like in the United States, you can't be
Oh,
like, oh yeah, I did porn for this long, or I was a cam girl for 12 years or
yeah,
something.
yeah. But having health insurance with a job would be real cool.
That definitely very cool.
And knowing how much money I'm going to make each month would be awesome.
I mean, I feel like that's just like the hardest part about camming is how you never know.
Yeah. I mean, that, and also like, I feel like partially why I've been able to stay as long as I have is I like have really learned to not take things personally.
hmm
Um, but it's still really hard when you are your product and you put like a monetary value on yourself and like you have a slow month. Like, because everyone has slow days, but when like you hit a real bad streak and you're like, well, maybe people just don't like me anymore. Maybe I don't
Yeah.
have it anymore. Like, maybe like I should do things totally differently and like, I don't know, compromise like my values. Cause I'm still very much one of those like nothing is free people. Like, I don't tease. Like, if you want me to stand
Yeah.
up, you're
No.
paying. And like
For
that's not
sure. Like,
the
yeah.
vibe everyone brings. Like some people are way teasier and some people show a little bit more. And like I would be so burnt out so fast if I didn't like keep the rigid standards I
You
do.
have to have those boundaries there because, like, there's very, whenever I have a fellow camp performer on here, it's so unique because, like, even though we do have a technically, like, safer form of sex work,
Mhm.
just like the mental drain is so high because you're dealing with thousands of men every single day trying to scam you and trying to get stuff for free.
I'm thinking that it's the first time I've heard it too.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, no. And it's hard also to like be able to maintain like empathy and not like devolve into misandry because of it.
For real, I mean, I'm a lesbian in real life, so it can very easily be like, yeah, fuck all men. But then when you actually have like decent clients who are like, oh, this is a great interaction, or if you have like a really great day on cam, but like, how do
Yeah.
you personally deal with like the thousands of men who are time wasters who will directly be like, I don't have money, but I want things?
Well, okay, so it really depends. I have days where it's like I'm not stellar. Like if I am tired or like this weekend, I had an awesome week. One of my sex worker friends came down from Washington and we went to
Hmm.
Disneyland and like
Oh my
it was so
God.
fun. It's so fun going and hanging out with other sluts. Um, we took pictures of our butts in the bathroom at Disneyland. It was so fun. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
I mean,
Um,
I don't think anyone who's gonna have authority at Disney is gonna listen to this, hopefully.
you never know, but you'll never be able to prove it. But I was like just run down this weekend and like I caught myself like not being as patient, just kind of being, well, fuck you then, and like
Yeah.
resorting to fan a little faster than I usually do because most of the time I was like, hey buddy, this is a business. Would you do this in any other business?
Yeah.
Or like, one thing I've noticed, and again, it's not all men, it's just like a large amount of the ones that come to campsites and want
Hmm.
things for free. Um, Please and thank you are no longer part of their vocabulary,
Never.
which is so foreign to me because, like, as a woman, you have to say please for things all the time.
Always.
Otherwise, you're a bitch. And it's just like they will ask for stuff without even saying please, and it's like, well, that's not
Hmm.
a nice way to ask for something, especially if you don't intend to pay for it. Like, come on. Or when people are really mean, like if someone comes in and is just like, you ugly bitch, go kill yourself. Or
Yeah.
any of that shit.
That
I'm just like,
definitely that happens. Yeah.
oh God, it happens. And it's like, hey, how are you? Because you're coming in really hot and there's got to be something else going on. What's up? Do you want
Yeah.
to talk about it? And like, I offer that invitation, and rarely do they want to talk about it. Sometimes they do, and sometimes like you're their 13th reason to stay. Which like
Mm.
I'm not here to save people, but part of being a sex worker is being a therapist in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of like emotional labor and unpaid emotional labor that goes into that, but I don't know. I try to like just remind people that I'm a human.
For sure.
And
That's so important because they just view you as someone on a screen who they can be a fucking
yeah,
bitch to.
and I think that's a large part of the disconnect. It's like, A, they're anonymous.
Hmm.
And, when you get to be faceless on the internet, it's much easier to be mean. And then when you don't recognize that the person you're talking to is another person, we're just like an ideal, essentially, that, like, oh, I need to treat someone a certain way kind of goes out the window. And so a lot of it is trying to like rein it back into that. I also have like a couple regulars that I can usually rely on to be there if I'm online,
Hmm.
whether or not they're like in a financial place to be spenders that day. But they, if shit gets out of hand, will be like, hey, buddy, fuck off. So I don't have to. And I can maintain the like, you know, positive vibes, though I am kind of a bitch too. And like
I
people hate
mean,
me for that. I'm
you
a woman over
truly,
30 with dark hair. I'm a dumb. Like
I mean, you have to be a bitch though. Like, it's, I was way too nice on cam my first like 2, 3 years of camming. And then I started dating this girl who was camming for 5 or 6 years. And she was just like, you're here to make money. You're not here to be nice to these people. Like, you need to be a bitch. And it's like, be obviously nice to your clients who are paying you, who you're actually doing stuff with. But like, these random men who are going on and be like, well, I don't have any money. You don't need to be nice to them.
yeah, I mean, my site in particular has now they've changed things so that guests only get 6 minutes before they get kicked.
I like that.
And they're really like pushing for more conversion. And so for a long time, like guest users who are people who don't have accounts and basic users who are people that don't have a payment method associated with their
Hmm.
account, but they've made a screen name. I just didn't let chat in my room. And so
That's
now
smart.
sometimes if I'm like, you know what, I have the capacity for this today, I'll turn those chats on. And sometimes I'm pleasantly surprised. A lot of times I'm not. A lot of times the guests end up bothering my regular customers more than they bother me because they're like, I don't like how people treat you. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. I'll just turn them off for a while. And like, I always turn them
Yeah.
off. We go to a party, which is kind of like gold show on some other platforms. And it's
Hmm.
funny how each site has their own like names for everything.
Terminology, it's so confusing. Like there it's so not actable from site to site. Like every site's so different.
Yeah, I also have a bunch of like copy paste messages that I
Yeah.
just have like ready to go. And like I have one of them that's like, hey, like if they've keep making requests, like I have one that's just like no requests without tips, please, that I'll send. And then I have one that's like, these sites are commission based only. Models don't make an hourly rate. So unfortunately, we really are not able to accommodate your requests for free. We only make a percentage of what you tip here. And a lot of them are like, oh shit, I didn't know.
They never know.
And it's like, either you're really new to campsites or you haven't been paying attention because that is what it is. I am sitting here making $0 an hour, sugar tits.
Yeah.
Like,
I've lately been hitting people with like when they're like, I don't have any money, I'm bored, and then I'm like, you have $20, and they'll be like, I don't have $20. I'm like, you can figure it out.
yeah.
Because it like opens them up to being like, okay. Because I'm like, I think sex work's amazing. I think campsites are amazing because you can explore your fantasy with anyone at any given time and do it in
Yeah.
a really safe way where you're at your home and on a client level as well. But like the guys who just sit on sex work sites and don't spend anything, I'm just like, that's such a waste of time for you, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many more productive things you can do because if you're just going to jerk off, just watch porn then.
I mean, I think a lot of it is also loneliness. There's
Mm.
that male loneliness epidemic. Um, but I think it is loneliness. And I think a lot of people like don't like it's really hard to make adult friendships. It really
True.
is, unless you have like a built-in community. Like I'm in recovery, so any city I go to, I can find my people, and like they have to be
Yeah.
nice
Yeah,
people
you
and
have the
understand.
meeting.
Yeah. But like unless you have like an interest that involves you going out and meeting with other people, like it's hard to make friends. And so, like, I understand that a lot of people are really lonely. And for a lot of people, campsites are their human interaction.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean they get to treat me like shit or,
for
not
real.
value my time because I am providing that service of like, yeah, I maybe not be taking my clothes off for you, but I'm entertaining you. I'm keeping you
Yeah,
company. And like my time and attention is a privilege, not a right. And that is the product here. So, like I'm willing to tolerate so much if someone's a non spender, but then it reaches a point where it's like, okay, I value myself too much
yeah,
to allow this to continue going on. And especially if they aren't a good conversationalist, like I need to be equally entertained by your presence. Like
for
if you want
sure.
to keep me company and hang out, and so I'm still chatting and the room is fun, like go ahead. But like if you're going to be a bummer or boring or complain the whole time or mean to me, absolutely not. There's no room for you.
For sure. How would you like limit kind of burnout on cam? Do you like have only like a specific number of hours you do?
It really depends. I always feel like I don't work enough. Which I realize is how the game is rigged. Um,
Yeah, that's that can be a slippery slope real fast.
it can, and it's like, well, it's mostly because I'm looking at my hours online, and it's
Mm,
like it's hard to clock 40 hours online on cam. I mean, I know some girls that are just machines and like absolutely do that
yeah.
easily, but I'm not one of them. And I have a very full life with a lot of responsibilities off cam.
Hmm.
But then there's also all the stuff that people don't see, like all the time I spend like taking pictures and replying to messages and uploading content and editing content and
Hmm.
all the other things. And I don't really, because they're not in my stats, think about those a lot of the time. And it's like, oh, like I actually work way more than I think I do. But I try and like maintain a balance. I it's hard for me to take a lot of time off because my site's one of those sites that punishes you for doing it by like tanking your power score.
Oh,
Um, yeah,
that's so hard.
it is hard. I mean, there are things that like stop you from falling too far, like lifetime credits per hour and that sort of
Hmm.
thing. But like I wasn't around a lot last week and like I paid for it. My visibility was crap. Like I did not make money this weekend. Like I'm gonna have to hustle hard this week to make rent. And that's just how it goes. And I think like I have a really strong support system and community off cam.
Hmm.
I make time to do things for myself. Like, I try and spend like 45 minutes outside every day, usually moving my body, sometimes just sitting there.
You
Um,
have to get out because like I feel
yeah,
like when you don't have a commute and you're working at home, like that used to really get me where I would be home for a week, I wouldn't leave the house just because I was like, oh, I work here. Obviously, I don't have to go to work.
yeah, yeah. No, I definitely have to like go outside at least a little bit every day. I
Yeah.
usually leave my house to like run an errand or something every day too. But I think also just like knowing when to log off.
Yeah.
Like if I'm sitting there watching my power score drop because it's a slow day and like people, especially if people aren't chatting and you're just like staring into the void of silence, because I also don't play music in my cam room, which is
Oh,
controversial.
yeah. What I started doing was I was like, okay, once AirPods came out, I was like, I can
Oh
utilize
yeah.
this.
I have a little spy earbud. So like I
Yeah.
like just put my hair over it and like I'm usually listening to a podcast or music, but I
Yeah.
don't play
Same.
music in my camera like some people do because I
I
think it sounds like shit.
also like, I
It's
feel
just
like
not good sound quality.
I'm a, I'm a cam girl and like a porn performer. Like I'm there not to dance. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, I can't.
Well, yeah, I used to have
Yeah,
like you
it's
could
not
tip and I
me.
would play a song for you and dance around to it,
Hmm.
but it's technically against site rules. I don't want any of my VODs taken down because of copyright issues. And
Yeah.
also, like, if we're listening to what I'm listening to, like, we're listening to the latest Ethel Kane album, and nobody wants to have that me. Um, like,
Yeah, the amount of clients who are into that, pretty
yeah,
narrow.
like, you guys want to listen to Sano? Like, no. Um, but and that's the thing too. Like I would hate for someone to come to my camera room, hear whatever I'm playing, whatever mood I'm in, and be like, this person isn't for me just because of their music taste.
Yeah.
So that's a large part of it. Also the whole like playing music through a speaker or your phone through a mic that's also picking up your voice, like it just sounds bad to me.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just not my vibe. I'm still also very much the like classic like kink live. Like I greet everyone when they come into my
Same,
room.
yeah.
Like have these canned phrases I've been using my entire cam career because they were like ingrained in us with training videos. Like
Literally, yes.
which
Like,
I wish that was more of a thing. Like my site does have like Flirt University, but
mhm,
like there isn't a mandatory training program. There's also like a lot of studios for non-US based models, which I think give a little more like coaching and
mhm,
support. But that was one thing about the Armory that was so special is we had like a built-in mentorship, like
mhm.
base to work with, and like so many gems of knowledge I got from other models who'd been that slightly longer than me, um, or had just like come across something, tips and tricks. Makeup sponges, like
Oh yeah, definitely.
I tell civilian women about the makeup sponge thing. For those of you who don't know, if you're a performer on your period, you can't fuck with a tampon in, but not all of us can take 5 to 7 days off a month. And so you just put a makeup sponge, like one of those little triangle sponge wedges up there,
Yeah.
and like it's soft and squishy. And like that's
I'm
mind
sure
blowing to people.
I'm sure this has come up on this podcast. I think we're at episode 60. I'm like, I'm sure someone had to brought up the makeup
Someone has
sponge.
to have explained it. It is like the best kept secret that is not that secret. I don't know how more women outside of porn don't know about it. But yeah, like stuff like that. And I don't know.
I
It's
Yeah, I feel like the Armory made makes you a lot better at your
mhm,
job as a porn performer or as a cam performer. Like it just made
yeah.
it way more serious where it was like, okay, you're actually here to take this job seriously. Where I think at home it can be very like I cammed I think for maybe 3 years before I worked at the Armory.
Okay.
So it was like a definite adjustment where it was like, okay, you're actually here to work, where at home it was still more, kind of chill where I'm like, I'm in my bedroom. Oh, cool, I
Yeah.
made $50 right now, as opposed to there where you're like, I took a train here, I took all this stuff, this is my whole day.
Yeah. I gotta get gas and parking back, guys.
Yeah,
Like,
right?
and I need to make rent. So let's go.
For
But
real. And I really
yeah.
appreciate you talking about like the ups and downs of camming because it's like you can be established, you can win camming awards, you can get nominated for awards and shit, but like you still have months and weeks where you're just like, what the fuck am I doing? I still
Mhm.
don't have rent paid. I was on cam for 6 hours today. I made, $15 or some shit like that, where it still happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, part of that is also I live in California.
Yeah.
So, like if I was living in another state, it may not be like a paycheck to paycheck situation, but
hmm
like I can't raise my prices any higher reasonably. Like, I already charge the highest rate possible for private and all
Yeah.
that. And like I had to tiptoe around when I did that. Like, be like, you're in my fan club. You can still do offers and stuff. Like, please don't leave just because I raised my rate. Like, it's for everyone else but you. Um, like, I value you. You're established with me. Like, I understand this is a big change. Um, but yeah, it can be really hard. And it's like, there's so many things that are included with a normal job that like aren't included, like comes
Yeah.
with and benefits packages and all that, and then you pay the extra like self-employment taxes too, and it adds up, and
Yeah.
people are like, well, let me just save your money better for the slow months, and it's like
My
there is
God.
none. Like I'm hustling and there is none.
And there's no way to like know when those slow months are gonna be
Yeah.
either. So it's just like this whole thing. Yeah, so for the people who don't know, cam girls, we all have to pay our taxes in a lump sum essentially. I guess you can pay
You
quarterly,
can pay estimated taxes, yes,
but
but
I don't know
estimated
anyone
is
who
hard when you have
does.
no clue how much you're gonna make.
Yeah, exactly. So like you have to every cam girl I know has to pay like in a lump sum around tax season. It's like this big cost that
And
can be
we
a lot of
do pay
anxiety.
taxes.
Yes.
Unlike some people think, we do pay taxes.
It's really crazy that we get the financial discrimination of the banking system, but
Mhm.
we also have to pay taxes and are doing quote unquote legal sex work. And
Yeah,
it's just,
it's wild to think about. But
and especially when a lot of it's just like masturbating in like a room in your house and you have to pay taxes on it, it is a little bit crazy to start to think about.
yeah, I mean, if you just start thinking about money too much, it becomes like a rabbit hole of like
Yeah. So
self-respect.
do you remember your first camp session?
uh yeah, I do. I was in the bordello room,
Oh, yes. Yeah. I definitely remember that room.
which was the like cowboy themed room.
Mm-hmm.
Um Yeah, I think a lot of people fetishize my age because I was like not even 21 yet.
Okay,
Um,
so you started that young.
yeah, and I'm 33 now, and people still fetishize
Oh,
age, but in
we're
the
we're
other
the same
direction.
age.
Yeah.
Okay, so you worked at the armory for like 2 or 3 years before I even got there. So you were there in like
2011.
2011. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been 13 years. It'll be 14 in October.
So were you there like when Maxine Holloway was still camming there too?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that I may have met her in passing, but I do remember her name.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like ships in the night kind of things where it's like, oh, I've heard about you. I've seen your Twitter, but
I'm like we all shared like the one same dressing room, so I'm
yeah.
like, yeah. I do kind of miss that sense of community, just like being
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, just hearing like other people camming, being like, oh, you had a good day today, okay, great.
Yeah.
Or like if other people had a shitty day, you'd be like, okay, it's not just me, you know?
Yeah, and that was it's such a unique environment, and also like the transition when it was like they opened it up to cam from home, but they still had the armory
Hmm.
studio, so some people were still going into the studio. And then there's all these like new cam girls that like didn't go through the rigorous process we all did. They weren't armory
Hmm.
girls. And like we're doing shit that was against the rules, and like drinking on cam, and like all sorts
Yeah.
of stuff. Like, and don't get me wrong, I had my phase of drinking on cam. I did it on my free cams where shot shows are a thing and allowed. But
That's so crazy, like that is allowed. Like I did a
blacking
cam
out
session
on
with
cam.
yeah, I've definitely had times where I like went to the Armory bar and then like after be like, maybe I'll camp for an hour, you know?
Yeah, I always kept it pretty buttoned up at Kink. Because I feel like that environment demanded a certain amount of integrity, and safety mindedness. Recently I celebrated 10 years sober, and somebody asked if I was
Congratulations.
high on set at Kink, and I was like, hey, like I wasn't really a drugs person. I was a liquids kind of girl. And also, absolutely not. I would have gotten kicked off so fast. Like that would not
Yeah.
have flown at all. Like
Yeah, I feel like if someone showed up to a shoot completely like drunk, people would be like very obviously no. Like the
yeah,
only thing I think of like my whole career was probably the upper floor, but like that was its own thing at the time.
that was its own thing. My first time at Kink was an upper floor party before I was a performer. I had never even been to Bondage a Go Go yet.
Oh,
I was just like a new, fresh little bright-eyed and bushy-tailed kinkster that like was on a date with a couple who had ties to upper floor, and we went to the
yeah.
upper floor Halloween party. And I was just like, what is this magical wonderland?
It's like, yeah, I was just talking to Stephanie about it where I'm like, it's so crazy because especially being like I was only like 22, so it was like, oh yeah, so there's this sex party and like everyone's a professional at having sex there essentially. And all the alcohol's free and there's free food. And it's just like that's just such a crazy thing when you're only like 22 and you just moved to a city. And you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh wow, I can do whatever I want up there essentially."
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It was very much a time and a place, and I'm sad it's gone. And people are like, would you ever shoot porn again? I'm like, I think it would just make me sad at this point because like I was there at the perfect time.
Yeah,
And
I think
I don't think I could recreate that or those experiences, so I'm not going to chase it.
yeah, that totally makes sense. It's very strange. So I still live in San Francisco. And it feels like it's almost like there's a lot of ghosts of what this expert community that was here. Like I
Hmm.
drive past the Armory often, and it's just like some tech companies now.
Yeah.
And you would just have no idea, or like the Center of Sex and Culture is gone. Where I just like drive by the building, I'm like, wow, I shot a gangbang there, and then it's just like now, just like an abandoned building on Mission.
Yeah, it's been years since I've been up to that area. Like I've gone further north because my family kind of went up that way when I went down
Hmm.
south. But yeah, I had a friend visit my hometown recently, and it was like, oh, is this still there? Oh, is that still there? Most of it isn't. And I think it is great to hold on to the memories of a time and place and realize when like that time and place has passed, at least for
Yeah,
me, you know.
for sure. Yeah,
It's
I
probably a few things I would come out of retirement. Like if the Pope wanted to shoot with me again, I probably couldn't say no, but
yeah. Also, I feel like now it's just like you can really do everything on your own terms and own it completely. And I think that's so different where back then it was still so based on studios and a director liking you enough to cast you, where now it's if you really want to have the will to do something, you can, you know?
yeah, yeah. Which I feel like a lot of that has also come from the like performer autonomy that has come from the
Hmm.
where it's like that's one of the good things that came out of it. I think a lot of people got into sex work and didn't know what they were getting themselves into and had a bad
Hmm.
time, which I never want anyone to have a bad time with sex work because that's how the evangelicals get their kosher kids. But at the same time, I think a lot of people realize like, oh, we can do this all ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's really important. I think that's another part of camming that like isn't talked about enough is like, some people's money isn't green enough.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't matter if it's a slow day. If someone's asking you to do something that like you're not okay with, don't. Like
Exactly.
I think the like reassurance of that is one thing that maybe newer performers don't get as often as I did. But yeah.
Yeah, I think also with like having camming like is your like core thing because that's the first sex work you did, and same with me, where it's like you can always just go back to it, where it doesn't feel like this dire thing where if it's like if I don't shoot with this porn company or don't get this job,
Mhm.
then I'm fucked, you know, where it's like, oh, I can always go back to cam. I know there's some audience there
Mhm.
who's gotten me this far, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. But yeah, I also never really like chased contracts or anything. Like I shot
Yeah.
with two companies for the most part. I did do like a couple other random smaller ones,
Hmm.
but it was more like they approached me and I was like, yeah, sure. But like kink and insects were the only two that I really wanted to work with and never really
Yeah,
did work with. And like I never wanted to be like a browsers girl.
for sure.
Just like I don't know if it doesn't turn me on, I don't want to do it. And like honestly, a lot of like my chasing porn experiences wasn't necessarily for sexual gratification, like in
Hmm.
the like penetration and climax type sense. It was more like mental gratification of like how far can I take this? How far can I push myself? How can I how far can I go with someone who like doesn't love me like a partner would that I'm like
Hmm.
trying to prove something to and like see where this goes. Like it was really just like a test for myself a lot of the time and like chasing my own limits as opposed to
Yeah.
like I want to like come.
I feel like there's a lot of like, after talking to Stephanie earlier, I feel like the mindset of a lot of the girls who worked at the Armory were very different than I think like mainstream porn. I don't think a lot of us wanted to be quote unquote like the biggest porn star. I don't think anyone wanted to be Jenna Jameson. It was like this like wanting to explore ourselves but also wanting it to be like this artistic thing and
Mhm.
also like just understand and like have these experiences, which I
Yeah.
think is really different where most people I think of porn, especially in like LA, it is so much about kind of the image with that, where I feel like here it's more kind of more tied to like this alt porn thing where it's about finding yourself and also
Mhm.
like making things out in the world as
Yeah.
opposed to just being like, I want to be the biggest porn star on browsers or
Yeah.
whatever other site.
Yeah. No. Yeah, the words are a funny thing too. People are always like, "Are you gonna go to AVN?" I was like, "No, why would I?" Like, I don't know. I did. Why not? I don't know that I will again because of the weird things that have come out about that
Yeah,
company.
it's done now.
Um,
I'm glad they gave me a trophy 2 years before that happened. I'm like, I still have it, but I'm not gonna
I
list it anywhere.
I never got the trophy. I was nominated, but it's cool because it's fan nominations, and I feel
Yeah.
like I've already won. Like enough people care about me to get me here. Like,
I remember you being nominated. I was like, "Oh my God, is she here?" I'm like, I was explaining to my wife, I'm like, "I've known this girl for like 10 years."
Yeah, yeah, but I am gonna miss the community aspect because that was really cool. I feel like there aren't a lot of cam only conferences or
Hmm.
events, and I feel like those were really special. But I don't know. Awards has never meant a lot to me. I
Yeah.
also like am not a big social media girly. Like I've tried when it was like, okay, all these OF girls are like building their brands through TikTok. And
Hmm.
like I tried that and I was like, this is not for me. Like honestly, like I understand social media. Like I probably could chase trends and try and go viral, but this is just not how I attract the following I
Yeah.
want. There was a point in time where I had like 21,000 followers on Twitter, and I went through with like some software and like removed 5,000, I think, because they were bot accounts or like
Yeah.
people who hadn't been active for like 7 years. And it was like, what does this follower account matter if
It
like it's
doesn't
not
really mean
full
anything.
conversions or like, you know, so I don't know. The awards, the followers, all the like shiny stuff. Like at the end of the day, like, are my bills paid? Am I comfortable? Am I happy? Do I have the freedom to do what I want because that's what the schedule affords? Like I've also been one of those girls that's never had a good schedule. Like it's like I'm online when I'm online. Figure it out. Like if you want to see me, you'll find me. Like fuck you. I don't have health insurance, so I get freedom. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's just like the outlook of how it was more here, I think in the Bay, where I just like that's like way more how I lean, where I'm just like I got into sex work originally because I didn't have like income. I grew up in like poverty. My family doesn't have money. So like for me, that was like definitely the thing where I'm like, I'm here to make money. You know what I mean? Like first and foremost, where I think it's so weird seeing now like so many OnlyFans girls and all this stuff on Instagram who are like have 500,000 followers and stuff. And it's just like this whole different new thing,
Yeah.
which I feel like a lot of that changed after the pandemic. Like during the pandemic, how was that for you as a cam performer?
Um, I mean, I have two like main customers that have been with me since Kink Live days.
Hmm.
And you know, like they've had their like seasons of life being lifey or other things that like, you know, made them not come around as frequently. People get into
Yeah.
relationships. I don't know. It's not my business, honestly.
Hmm.
If they want to share that type of stuff with me, fine. But like, I don't talk about relationships. It's like, I don't
For
want to talk about
sure.
my relationships with you. Like, I'm not going to ask you
Right?
for yours. Like, let's just leave that out. It doesn't matter here, anyways. Like, not what any of us are here for. And if you are here for that, wrong site, honey.
Yeah,
Uh,
right. I love telling people that. Be like, I think you just want a dating site.
well, see, that's the
Like,
thing is my site uses so many white labels, so there are for sure people coming through like horny singles in your area ads.
oh
Um,
no.
Yeah, yeah. So
Ugh.
it's like some people may think that, and I have to clear it up really fast because also with like Sesta Fawcett, the whole like, so can we meet in person is like, well, that's a federal crime, hun. So
Yeah.
you need to not say that here because the livelihood of me and everyone else on this site depends on you not saying
I
that.
always like saying that's breaking TOS, and then that usually stops them.
Oh, I will straight up like explain it to them about like, hey, there's just fucked up federal law, and what you just need to get this entire site shut down because the government hates sex work. And they'll be like, wow, shit, I didn't know. When you put it that way, I take it way more seriously. Um, but yeah, so I have like my core regulars that I would be lost without, to be
Hmm.
honest. And it's weird to have so much of your life depend on like four people.
For
Um,
real.
but you know, and then there's like an ebb and flow. Um, lately, the recession has been recessioning for sure. I haven't been getting as many like short privates or like, you know, random people. It's also like the first quarter of the year. It's a weird time for a lot of people.
Hmm.
But I didn't notice that big a change over the pandemic. Really like the last year is where I've noticed the biggest change. Like I worked 350 hours more this year than I did last year, and I made 2 grand less.
Uh,
Um, and like that's wild because
for
there's
sure.
also that dialogue of like you don't work enough that I told myself, and it's like maybe me being here more isn't a good thing. Or do I need to work even more because people are spending so much less? And it's like those mind traps of like, do I do more? Do I do less? Am I more selective? Like, do I raise rates? Do I lower rates?
You don't know how much I've had this in my head all the time whenever anything on cam happens because especially when you're just sitting there, you have nothing but time to think.
Yeah.
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 Oh, wow. Well, I'm so glad that we could talk about all this camming stuff. So I have one final question for you.
Yes.
It's the only kind of like BuzzFeedy kind of question I
Mhm.
have. Let's say you could wake up tomorrow and one thing in porn or camming could magically change. What would you have it be?
Oh gosh. The fetishization of black men
Yeah,
would
for real.
because as a I mean, I don't know if I'm like thicker, but like I have a thick lower body and I'm white. And so there's a lot of like people that want to do race play with me and it makes me wildly uncomfortable. And whether it is like someone who wants to be cuckolded by a BBC or someone who wants me to call them certain words I won't use, like it is really just so rooted in America's history of racism. And like a lot of time people don't really like realize that. And as like the white woman with the position of power, usually, where it's like if I call rape, you get lynched.
Yeah.
It's really upsetting to me, and I wish it wasn't a thing. Yeah,
It
that's
really
the thing
felt
I would
like
change.
it really felt like a moment like after in 2020 where there's like the whole racial reckoning and stuff. It seemed like the industry for a second was gonna be like, okay, we're gonna stop with like interracial porn, we're gonna stop with this like overly offensive shit.
Mhm.
And then it seems like it just never went away, where it felt like there's a lot of talk for like the first few months, and then it
Yeah,
ultimately just kind of came back.
yeah, and it's like, is the demand because it exists and people are finding it when they're formative, or does it exist because there's a demand for it? The same with like incest stuff. Like, how much of
Yeah.
that is because it was trending on Pornhub and kept getting made, and so it kept trending, and like, I don't know. Um, but
Does your site allow race play? Because like multiple campsites I'm on, if anyone even mentions it, they'll shut down your stream. Yeah, it happens. But I was saying, yeah, so with race play, like multiple campsites I'm on, if someone even asks about it and you like, I think I even said no to the client and it immediately stopped my stream.
oh, yeah, we're not that closely monitored, unfortunately. And I'm
Mm,
like a rules stickler too. So
same
a lot of
here.
times I'm like saying no to things and reporting stuff to the admins that probably other people would let slide. I think certain words are banned, and technically anything that would be seen as I don't remember the wording of it, offensive.
Yeah.
They have a blanket term for like that type of thing, but there isn't anything specifically
Mm.
disallowing it. And it's just not for me. Like I also like won't talk shit on people's partners. Like
Yeah, I
I
hate
would
that
like,
shit.
and I'll be like, no, like I'm not gonna do that because she's not consenting to that, and you're making putting her down part of your kink, and that's just not right. Um, I don't know.
Yeah, I
I say
don't.
no to a lot of things. And like it's like I'm very kinky, but not that type of taboo friend.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, what's the kink? You're just being a shitty partner to your wife.
Yeah.
Like, I can't get into that. Or like the ones that will be like, my wife's in the next room, and I'm always like, let's get her involved then. I'm like, I
Well,
would
I do
rather do that,
charge
you
double
know?
for couples, so
Oh, you do?
it's 2 people viewing. Honestly,
Yeah.
like I'm gonna have to interact twice as much. Like uh, a lot of times why I have that rule is because the couple will be wasted, and it's like I don't want to deal with
I,
this. But
yeah, I feel like the couple, it's oftentimes where I'm like, oh, this is obviously just a guy pretending to be his wife. Because I'm
yeah,
like, I don't think a woman's responding that way.
or a guy pretending to be a woman. A lot of times, I have had female clients,
Yeah.
and they talk very differently than the. But I'm just a girl too. Did you know?
Yeah, I mean, the lesbian clients, that's like the top tier. I wish it was more than like 3%, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But
Um,
yeah, so that's the big thing I would change. Certain kinks that, isolate marginalized groups.
Love that. Good thing to remove. Where
Mhm.
can everyone find you on Cam and on socials?
So on Cam, I'm on Flirt for Free. On socials, I mostly use Twitter. Yeah, I'm still calling it Twitter. I don't care.
Yeah,
And
same.
Blue
No
Sky.
one's calling it eggs. Fuck that
And
shit.
they're all just at my name. Make sure you spell Catherine right.
With a
It's
K.
Arine, not Erine. Um, and yeah, I always post on socials when I'm logging on, so you can keep an eye out there.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so glad we could go deep diving into like the cam life
Yeah.
and all the stuff at the armory. And yeah, it's so nice to talk to you.